welcome to another Saturday morning, a very chilly one. Yeah, so welcome to Docs Kenya. This is another event we are having, basically titled Technical Writing. And our speaker today is Douglas Sabwa, who is a software developer. In addition to that, he's also a community manager, and he has a background in computer science. Parole is a software developer, passionate about traveling and nature walks. He also has a YouTube channel, basically teaching more about programming and stuff. And I think we are going to learn more from him in the field of technical writing. And I will also pass the mic to him later on so that he can introduce himself and we can get to know him better. So, moving forward, first of all, is to announce our new partnership that is with Propel. So, for those of us who are not familiar with Propel, basically it's a platform like that helps developers and anyone in the tech space to easily find jobs. So they act like an intermediary for you who is looking for a job to get a role in the field. So if you haven't joined our community in Propel, so go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen, sign up, and I will be looking at the dashboard. And I think for the first two people who join up, you will get some swags, the Docs Kenya swag from us. Be sure to sign up. So basically, the platform will help you find jobs at ease. You will not need to go to Google search for specific jobs. Like it brings all jobs under one roof for you. So all you need to do is like upload your resume and apply for a specific job. So scan the QR code on the screen and be sure to join our community and be on the lookout on the job space on the roles that fit in your criteria, all the roles that you qualify for. And yeah, so I think with that, we are going to get started with today's session. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to introduce today's speaker, who is Douglas. So, Douglas, welcome on board. We are looking forward to learn more from you. And for the guys joining in, make sure that you have your questions ready. And yeah, be inspired with his journey and his teaching. So, over to you, Douglas.
Thank you, Tim, for that. Peter Waburi, Kansi Muigai Mwangi, Bridget, Dion, Opudo, Steve, Jackie, Sam, thank you, and all the other guys who are joining us. My name is Douglas, as you have heard. I am a software dev. I've been in this field for quite some time as an intern, as a student, now as someone who is deep within the tech space. You will pardon me if there is some background noise because of where I am, but I'll try as much as possible to minimize. Today we are going to look at a session on writing, of course, navigating through the technical writing session, and primarily with the aim of positioning ourselves at an advantaged place for us to secure jobs. So if you are planning to start any career around technical writing, you can also know where to start. Or perhaps if you're doing that as a maybe part-timer, you can also have a career around that. You'll allow me do some presentation. So let me just share my screen. Meanwhile, if you have any question, you can be asking it while we proceed. So as we begin, I want you to reflect on how you started maybe learning how to say a word. For example, good morning, right from when you are a kid at nursery school level, and and maybe how you eventually managed to. Okay, is it now visible? Someone?
Yes.
or I hope it's in slideshow mode. I wanted us to reflect on the very first time that we started learning how to say a word. And you realize we started from the very basic aspects of now how do you write a letter A, B, C, D, E until Z. And clearly that is how technical writing works. So you have to break down your content in such a way that the people you are targeting and whatever you are aiming to achieve at the end of the day, you're not missing out on the target. So let's look at what technical writing is. Basically, technical writing involves yeah, when it comes to conveying complex information accurately. And sometimes the information that we are conveying is maybe a little bit technical, and that's why someone would refer to it as complex. Complex would be relative depending on the kind of audience you are referring to. So you have to convey your information in such a way that whoever is reading it can, one, access, and by access we mean even people with disabilities, and number two, that's visual impairments, maybe hearing impairments, or any other kind of impairment someone may be having, or limitations. But whatever you are writing, as what developer refers to the docs, they are accessible to any other person who might be interacting with whatever piece of material you wrote. And the goal of technical writing is to inform, instruct, and guide the users to understand the use of your products or the processes around them, or even the concepts. Because I heard there was a session in Kabarak about APIs, but if people are not really understanding your concepts, then it means there's an issue with the kind of data or the kind of writing that you are conveying, or the material itself. So when we do technical writing, we are assuming that whoever is reading my material wasn't part of this particular activity or this particular software or any other thing that you are writing about. You assume as though it is the first time they are viewing this kind of document. So you would want to break it down and make it as simple and as clear as possible. That's just a little bit of introduction about me. I am a software dev. But I don't really like titles. I just did this for the sake of the session. But basically, that's what I do. We are in the line of tech, ensuring that we integrate USSD, M-Pesa, other APIs. I mostly work with web-based systems, even though on a corporate level, but sometimes I also do freelancing. I'm in the healthcare sector, and that's what I do. It's a very interesting field. And as you also heard, I do part-time technology coaching. I have a community of learners that I usually take through aspects of. Right now, we are focusing on web design basics, and that's what we do. We are over 530 learners in our community, and we do try break down those complicated computing aspects into very simple chunks that people can understand. Our objective for the session today is to empower all the writers or those who communicate anything tech, the open source guys, to collaborate seamlessly. You hone your writing skills, and then you, of course, excel in this field of technical documentation. Another objective was to have you gain valuable insights and practical tips to create an impactful documentation, and now enhance your writing proficiency and put yourself at an advantaged position when it comes to the job market in writing. So let's dive in. The very first thing that you need to do when it comes to technical writing is understanding your audience. And if you miss out on this, trust you me, the documents that you are going to write, any piece of material you are going to share, will just be understood by you and your team, because you are not aware of the people you are writing to. The very first thing is to identify what your audience is, and that entails their knowledge level, their needs, and the expectations. You need to understand that. Then, how do I tailor my content? Because I'm writing to guys who have advanced IT skills. How do I tailor my content? And again, if I'm writing to those guys who are just starting, for example, if I have an SMS API and I need to write to help Form 4 leavers to understand what I'm writing. So these Form 4 leavers, perhaps they've never heard of JSON. They've never heard of callback URL. The only thing they know is maybe whatever they learned in high school, Microsoft, was it Access or what? Building a database. And again, you are talking to them about these data types they've never had. So how can you tailor your content in such a way that I'm understanding what you're saying? And again, if I'm writing to the IT guys, if I just write something like maybe you're talking about databases and you are referring to let's say NoSQL space, that this is a NoSQL DB, or this is a relational, non-relational DB like NoSQL or MySQL. Comparing the two, I'm able to just write that in my database, and I'm good. The SQL schemas and all that, you can communicate those kind of complex things to IT guys and they'll be able to understand. But when it comes to the guys with a little bit of less or not so much of advanced knowledge in IT, you need to know how to tailor your content. How do you structure that document? Because that's also another thing. The way you structure a document can inform how people understand it. Assume you are writing about a very new product in the market. For example, the product that I saw, I think it was Propel, or I don't know what it was when the meeting was starting. Someone can just confirm on the chat box the name of that particular product or app. So imagine you've been assigned a task to write about such a product, and it is very, assume the product was maybe made in a very, okay, Propel. Yeah, Propel. So assume that kind of product, it has quite a number of things or very many things to write about. So you need to structure your document in such a way that you will include the sections, subsections, headings, and subheadings. And the reason for us to do this is you want to structure your content in such a way that if I'm only interested in knowing the technology aspect of it, there's a link that has been shared. I would just go straight from the subsections or headings. So I would go to chapter 5 that talks about implementation or debugging. The table of contents are there also to guide you, because you cannot write a very technical document just like a text ya WhatsApp. Naandika ukitaka if you want to integrate M-Pesa to a certain product or whatever thing that you're building, this is how you do it. So your content is jumbled up in such a way that someone has to really struggle for them to get it. But providing a table of contents will be good for easy navigation. Then the summary of it. If there's an abstract of that kind of piece of material or a technical aspect you're writing about, let's say machine learning, there's a model that you are working with and you've come up with this particular complicated model, and people need to really understand what you're doing, so that from just a document they can read and really know, this particular model is a predictive analysis, so you can predict the number of say disease occurrences in a certain region in a certain year until maybe 2037 through this model. But if you do not communicate that clearly through your document, maybe in an abstract or summary or main points, someone would really struggle to even know, because some of those models involve a lot of algorithms, mathematical formulas, and quite a number of things. So you would leave your audience blank. When it comes to the writing style, how do you do it? You have to be clear and precise, because if at one point you keep on repeating yourself, or you keep on injecting this kind of jargon in your documentation or your writing, it means there's a large group of people you are leaving out. Instead of saying the maybe the maximum server capacity, so someone would inject a very technical word. Okay, let's just use even bandwidth. So talking to a beginner in tech about bandwidth, they would really struggle with that. But if you tell them, break it down and try explaining to them what bandwidth is, or for example, what happened recently by CrowdStrike. So people are wondering, what is BSOD? Because it was very common that we have a blue screen of death. So watu wanashanga, what, what, what is that BSOD? And you would leave a large group of people outside whatever you are trying to communicate. Remember, technical writing also entails you as a technical communicator giving out information. Sometimes, as an IT lead, when you are working with, now that I told you I work within the healthcare, you're having this day when the health facilities are doing their normal operations, then a downtime occurs, and the systems are, they are the ones powering the operations of the hospital and or the health facilities you're working with. And there's downtime because there was something that tripped, because the system is being managed from a cloud, maybe Google Cloud or Azure, and there was a technical issue that happened on their side, and you need to communicate to your clients that this is a downtime issue. So having to break it down in a way that they would understand and not think it's maybe their internal networks or it's something to do with the gadgets and every other thing, but again, without leaving room for ambiguity, and again, not using very complicated terms. I don't know, the tunnel did what, there was something, someone pushed an unverified code in the production environment. So we didn't pull request and merge it correctly. There was no verification. And imagine you're talking to, or you're expressing whatever you're saying to a beginner. So at the end of the day, you would end up missing or leaving out quite a number of people. The active voice, prefer active over passive for more direct and engaged writing. I won't focus so much on that. Then you being concise, so you remove unnecessary words and avoid redundancy. So once you've talked about this product helps people to make mobile money payments, and every other time you're saying, if you want to send payment, if you want to send money, if you want to do a transaction, if you want to, those are some of the words or some of the things you can run away from. How do you communicate the technical details? Number one, you define those technical terms and provide explanations for complex concepts. Now, I would challenge us, even for those of us who are in the technical field. Someone says machine learning. Someone says artificial intelligence. Another one says deep learning. Someone else talks about the artificial neural networks. So you would ask yourself, What is the difference between machine learning? How about deep learning? What about artificial intelligence? So you need to explain some of these technical terms to someone, because if you talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, okay, by definition, they are two different things, but in some perspective, they are interrelated and one is a subsection of the other. But how do you communicate such terms to your audience? When it comes to you communicating, the easiest way or approach would be use examples, use diagrams, use illustrations, and clarify your points. I would show you how to illustrate something using another website, and how to actually communicate whatever you are trying to say to your readers without leaving anything out. Then have have support for your points, because if someone is reading a document for the very first time, or the kind of material that you're writing about a certain thing, how do they even relate? For example, you're explaining about Microsoft Excel formulas, and you are trying to explain how, let's say, a simple function like concat works. So you would do an illustration like, this is cell A, this is cell B, and this is cell C. So they would join, and this is the final output of that particular formula or function. There are some complicated technologies like, let's say, even M-Pesa or USSD. I sometimes do sessions on USSD. And having to explain to someone how USSD works without sounding so complicated, I would use diagrams. I would show you one of the scenarios where I use diagrams for me to explain what I'm trying to communicate. Then the terminology should be consistent throughout the document. Consistency, because you would leave quite a number of people outside when it comes to whatever you are communicating, because you're not using consistent terminology. At one point you mention this, at the other you mention this. So it would be good if you are focusing on, say, mobile money transaction, then you would want to maintain that. Instead of, at one point you're mentioning Airtel money, at one point you're mentioning M-Pesa, at one point you're mentioning Equi, whatever, those T-Cash and every other kind of mobile money transaction. But you using consistent terminology throughout the document would help people to relate to what you're saying. I want to stop sharing and show you an example of how to use illustrations when it comes to documentation. So just a minute. Okay, so let me just take this. So meanwhile, while we are looking at that, there's also another aspect of reviewing and editing your work, because at the end of the day, no one is perfect, and the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation errors, you would sometimes miss them out. So as you do technical writing, it is also good for you to review and edit your work. What are some of the ways in which you can have your work proofread? So use online checkers like Grammarly. You can use some tools. There are AI tools available. You can use them. There's also this Microsoft Word, or the text, what are they called? The text documenters and editing software. You can, some of them, they have inbuilt grammar checkers, so you can utilize them. Peer reviews. While you are writing your document, have someone else also review what you've written, because you would have written something so good for your team, that can only be understood by your team. But if you're having another person, maybe a second or a third eye on it, someone would be like, no. The way tech guys wanakwambia, mazee hapa hii nayo hapana, hii I make sense. Okay, not making sense in the aspect of it won't make sense to the users. Remember, the developers are not users and the users are not developers sometimes. If there's an invention or innovation that you've made, it's only understood by your team. You need to make people aware of how it works. You remember when mobile money was just a thing by then? You couldn't understand how exactly does mobile money work. Mtu unaweka simu kwa pesa kwa simu aje, and how does it really get to someone? And okay, right now maybe it's quite common, but by then, hizo miaka za kitambo, explaining to sure that because your SIM card has been misplaced, you still have money in M-Pesa. So if you replace your SIM card, you still have your money. That would be quite a task. It's such a huge task for you to explain to that shosho that hiyo SIM card yake haijaenda na pesa, wamemwibia, lakini pesa zake ziko. So you can imagine explaining to them that, because if you cannot explain to someone, even like maybe a class 2 or grade 2 kid, what a computer is and how a computer really works, it also means you haven't understood that by yourself, and it is to your disadvantage if you are doing technical writing. Then doing revision of your work as part of editing. Oh, sorry, I had to authenticate this up. I thought it had loaded. Just trying to check the AT docs. So doing revision of your work, each and every time be prepared. Multiple times you will need to revise your document, even for the terms of service and agreement. More often than not, they're usually revised. They're usually revised from time to time because the needs of the audience keep on changing. The tech ecosystem, it keeps on changing. So there's no need for you to keep on writing docs about how to refill airtime using a scratch card. Yet nowadays, people are doing that through other means. So is it time to revise your document on how to allow users to purchase airtime? So be ready to be revising that from time to time. Okay, let me go to Sandbox. Just wanted to show you an example. Okay. So while we are still at it, another thing to consider when you're doing technical writing is the formatting and the presentation of your document. So how do you present it to your users? How do you format it so that it's in a way that the users or people who are reading your work can be able to see and make sense out of it? Number one way that you can do that is using the visual elements. The visual elements entail bullets, numbers, and highlighting the important information. They usually say men are drawn to what they see. I don't know if that also works for ladies, but I would tend to think there's a way in which how you present yourself or whatever you're doing would inform the kind of feedback. So, and not being biased, sorry to say, but there's a way in which if a lady has presented themselves in a certain way, they would be at an advantaged position for them to be seen. Unlike those who, the opposite of that, I wouldn't want to focus so much. so much on that, lest I start deviating. Another way you can format and present your document so well is highlighting the key points, because there are things you would want to really highlight. If you're working with an API, let's say you're writing about even an SMS API, there are things you would want to focus on. Put them in italics, put them in bold, but as you do that, also do that sparingly, so that there is no much of, you would wonder why someone has bolded almost all their document. Then, if you're preparing something like a flowchart or a summary, ensure there is enough space for that flowchart that someone can see. This is the flow, this is how you get in, this is how this exactly works, without having to miss out or leave your users wondering what on earth is going on in this particular document. Okay, so docs, good, that has loaded. Let me also talk about the tools and the resources for us who are doing technical writing. Number one, software tool that you can use, of course, very obvious. They are the grammar checkers. Grammar checkers, like I said, Grammarly is one of them. You can use citation managers, for example, Zotero. Zotero, if you're using someone else's work or someone else research work, it is good as you document that in your technical writing, you acknowledge that person or the author or whoever in a certain way. You can use Zotero. Sometimes you might want to use document templates. For example, Swagger APIs, they give you a template for you to write and document your work, so that you're not, there's a way in which things are done, there's a way in which technical content is written. So you don't want to be the first one, right? Mtu anashangaa hii sasa ni vitu gani? So people are used to technical content in a certain format, but in your case, you are just writing whatever that is in your head. So it's good for you to compare the other templates and see what other developers are writing or other technical writers are doing in the job market. The guides, when it comes to the styling, we have the APA styling, we have also the IEEE styling. Also look at it, because you just wouldn't want to write. You are not the first one who is doing technical writing. Despite you having the knowledge of it, you're not the first one to be doing that. There are people who have already done something around that. That's why it's good for you to use the very standard and the very standard way of formatting your document, so that you're not missing out on anything. Okay, so as we come to an end, what are some of the ethical considerations you would want to have a look at as you do technical writing? One that I've mentioned earlier is citations. Properly cite all the sources and give credit to the original authors. You don't want to do a very good document, but deny credit to the people who came up with it. If I am doing my writing and citing every other source, but ignoring the fact that this was someone else's work, that would be flagged as plagiarism. So why spend your time so that someone would flag you as, you stole my work? Then accuracy. This is very important. You don't want to say, or you don't want to write something as a tech guy that is not technically correct. For example, someone would say, and just for a matter of not being biased about a certain telecom provider. So someone would write that we are having a downtime at our telco because an undersea cable was cut. And you would wonder, okay, first of all, is it even accurate? Because the cables that the undersea cables that supply whatever internet in East Africa, they are not managed by a telco. They are managed by maybe a very huge organization that, and the way the fiber cables are, you wouldn't expect them in the way that they are being communicated, and at that time you would question if that is technically correct. So because for that to happen, maybe it really entails a lot for that to happen. I'm saying that because I've ever been to where the fiber cables get into East Africa. So the way you see the cable insulated, um, and whatever happens to the cable, you would even wonder if someone just walk up and cut it. So the accuracy, you don't want to communicate something that is incorrect and that is not well researched. If you're telling someone, for example, my API works in a certain way, but by the time someone is trying to compare that with IT knowledge, it doesn't add up. So have you researched so well about whatever you are writing, or you're just writing it for the sake of writing? If I'm writing about cPanel, sometimes I take time to just blog. If I'm blogging about a certain thing, is it really accurate? Is it an accurate representation of that which I'm saying? Confidentiality, that's an ethical consideration. Confidentiality, because you need to respect confidential agreements and avoid disclosing sensitive information without someone's permission. Imagine you are in a technical, oh, sorry. uh, sorry. Sorry about that. Sorry. I switched my screen for me to, let me just a minute. Okay. I was sharing something about confidentiality while I prepare my screen. So you are working on a certain document, and for some reason you need to communicate to the users about a certain thing. Right now, we only interact with some of these APIs from an API key level. So you only consume the APIs, but you don't really know the contents behind it. But wewe na kiherere yako, you go, now as your team, you've agreed this is like code. I don't know the best term to refer to it, but it's information that is only to be consumed by us. So at one point you get access to that information and you are blogging about it. So you end up writing, if you want to see the source code for M-Pesa, this is it. Click the link below. Or if you want to have access to write the docs, server, and every other thing, this is what they shared to us during a certain event. So this is it. And perhaps that environment or that sandbox was only available for you because of that kind of agreement that you had with them. So respect confidential agreements and only share information that you've been allowed to share. Because if you go against that, it is now considered as an ethical issue. And that wouldn't be fair enough about the people you are writing to or the thing that you're writing about. Okay. I don't know. I think Africa's Talking changed their documentation. I can't really find what I was trying to. Okay, this is what I was saying. When it comes to ethical considerations, the accuracy of what you're communicating, ensure you're not the one behind these malicious organizations communicating information that is inaccurate to other people. And as an IT practitioner, one thing that you should always adhere to is the industrial practice, which entails integrity. So you would want to be that kind of person who advocates for how the things are being done, but in the IT space in a manner that doesn't compromise even our work. So someone getting into the IT space would know that this is a very serious field, for example, medicine. So you wouldn't find doctors just writing anything. Someone would even be scared enough not to do something because it goes against the practice of that particular profession. As you position yourself in the career that you would want to do, or sometimes do part-time or full-time technical writing, always be that kind of person who is not being, because it is now a career, you're not being paid to mislead the audience about certain things. So because people have seen maybe Dion or Sam or Brenda or Peter, so they are an, or Jackie, because they are an IT lead or a software engineer or Preston, wameona hapo chini signed by Jackie, software lead something, they would want to believe that because it is communicating the very right information. But really, in a technical aspect, it is just misleading people. I talked about citations. Always remember to give people credit because someone can jail you. And under legal terms, yeah, you would find yourself in trouble because of technical writing, ignoring the fact that you need to cite people's work. I've talked quite a lot about confidentiality, and I won't repeat that. I can see time is not really on my end. I just wanted to show you something here when it comes to the flowcharts or the kind of content that you need to use. When it comes to the visual aids, the diagrams and the charts, they really work so well. The visual aids, the tables, use them so well. Then balance your content for readability. So you have a balance between the visual aids and now the content itself. I've talked about peer review, the tools, the ethical considerations, but above all, the goal is to ensure that your learners, your users or the people who are reading your document, they can see a logical flow in it. They can see the sections clear enough, and they can now balance those details first from a simple detail, then to a detail that reveals so much of maybe information. So if I'm talking about how to set up Node.js, so first I would say, what is Node.js? Who uses Node.js? And how do I set it up? How do I set up the npm packages? And now go into the details. If you want to install Node.js using the command line interface, this is what you do. If you want to install Node.js using the Windows, whatever, this is how you do it. Technically, I'm done with at least the concepts that I wanted. Yes.